Hi everyone. Today we'll be doing one thing and one thing only, which is reading my essay about Empanada's transphobia. All we'll be doing is reading this essay from top to bottom. Because it is an essay, it is effectively a script that I've read before and practiced multiple times, but I hazard to guess that I will make some small mistakes throughout, but nothing that would interfere with you understanding what I'm trying to say, hopefully. Before we get started, here's a little bit of information about me. My name's Persephone van der Waard. I have my MA in Gothic English Literature, an independent PhD in Gothic Poetics and Ludo-Gothic BDSM, focusing partially on Metroidvania, and I am the author of the multi-volume non-profit book series Sex Positivity. Its art director, sole invigilator, illustrator, and primary editor. The other co-writer, co-editor being Bay Ryan. I'm a male-to-female trans woman, Tolkien and Amazon enthusiast, anti-fascist, atheist and Satanist, polypan-kinkster, erotic artist, pornographer, and anarcho-communist. You can financially support my blog and this YouTube channel through Ko-fi or Patreon. One is safe for work and the other not safe for work, but the money for either goes towards the same art and essays I produce, which often complement each other. Lastly, before we start, this essay focuses predominantly on bad empanada. It does, however, have examples of transphobia from trans people and cis queer people. There will be footnotes at the bottom of the essay. However, I won't be reading those as I'd like the video to focus specifically on bad empanada. But if you're curious, you can go to this article yourself and read them. Also, I feature a solidarity exhibit with sex workers, predominantly trans, intersex, or non-binary, with the Arab population of Palestine, or just the people of Palestine more broadly, who are being exterminated by the Israelis. However, given the nature of the exhibit, it features, on this blog post in particular, censored nudity. However, despite the fact that the nudity is censored, YouTube is really finicky about that. So, just to not have to deal with that at all, I won't be showing the exhibit itself in this video. I'll just be reading the names of the people involved. If you want to see the exhibit itself in its censored form, you could go to this blog post, as well as the non-censored version found on my 18 and Up website. Without further ado, let's get started. The chickens come home to roost. Transphobe Empanada goes mask off. Originally written September 4th, 2025. This essay takes longtime transphobe Bad Empanada to task, i.e. in light of a recent crash out on Twitter, actually embodying a large, long-standing issue of transphobia with him, made in collaboration with a variety of trans, intersex, and enby sex workers, who appear mostly at the end, unless you include me. Let's smite his bollocks, and discuss oppression holistically in the footnotes, by giving some token cisqueer and non-cisqueer examples of transphobia, too. In regards to the crash out on Twitter, I'm referring specifically to this post made by Bad Empanada, responding to someone else, to a post by Bad Empanada that is no longer available. However, I will have the screen caps for it in my essay. This crash out by Bad Empanada started around August 27th, going into September 1st and beyond. Note, Chickens Come Home to Roost is part of my Sex Positivity book series, which continues after its June 2025 finale in small form content, e.g. essays on and interviews with other sex workers, i.e. I've worked with muses and models beyond those on my acknowledgements page, whose featured models worked with me while I produced Sex Positivity. To see everyone I've drawn before during and after said series, refer to my sex work page. Also, this is the safe for work version of this essay, which features censored nudity. The not safe for work version of this can be found on my 18 and Up website, which features uncensored nudity. For the visually impaired, I'll be reading the safer work version of this essay on my YouTube channel, specifically this video. Disclaimer regarding essay contents: all opinions are my own, i.e. as part of my research conducted alongside my book series, Gothic Communism. The material within is written, speaks about public figures and popular media for purposes of education, satire, transformation, and critique, hence falls under fair use regarding copyright and free speech regarding defamation. Content warning: sexism, racism, transphobia, whorephobia, genocide, and tokenism. The chickens come home to roost. People who talk about sex constantly and openly like it's their main interest must be dealt with. Make it taboo again. BDSM doctor, that's not a real thing. Jesus fucking Christ. Bad Empanada and a now deleted 2024 community post. Today's piece, which I've written in response to Bad Empanada's recent mask-off moment on Twitter, a crash out as the kids say, will be short and to the point. Empanada is exhibiting reactionary antics comparable to fascism, less genocide. In other words, if you scratch a reactionary, a fascist bleeds, and genocide isn't activism. In light of the Palestinian genocide's continuation, including the failure of several affluent trans women to say anything preventing it, Abigail Thorne and Natalie Wynn, the two trans women in question, alongside J.K. Rowling, a cis woman, billionaire and fascist, and Bad Empanada, a Marxist-Leninist with reactionary, ergo fascist, tendencies pertaining to trans people. Not just these two, but also people from the First World, which, I would add, includes Bad Empanada. He's chosen to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Acting like he does, Empanada would have you believe that all trans people are First Worlders, i.e. those on the receiving end of total privilege, ergo the deserving end of revenge against the haves versus the have-nots. Per Empanada's false equivalency, a single trans person, especially a trans woman, let's be frank, embodies the whole of collective punishment, i.e. a privileged and treacherous mass of imperial beneficiaries enjoying the perks of citizenship, a mendacious crew, if not equipped with giant YouTube channels and corporate shares themselves, still bear an essential unworthiness comparable to Hitler's backstabbing Jew, or any other fascist scapegoat. Empanada's narrative depicts the trans person as a scapegoat of the fascist sort, one to draw up support and funds for the lynching thereof, i.e. by Arabs who, in Empanada's mind, are somehow never trans from a praxial standpoint, i.e. Empanada is fascist for blaming trans women for the sins of empire, and I will handle him accordingly. The rest of this piece will compile the most egregious of Empanada's recently threatening and deeply reactionary behaviors, the show of solidarity with Palestinians, specifically GNC sex workers, as those are the people I predominantly work with, will appear at the end of the essay. First, slurs aren't activism, re as I have written regarding Bad Empanada in the past. And accusing trans people of somehow being false below is an old turf strategy, the man in a dress argument invading women's spaces. The same applies to Empanada's treating trans people as false because they're partially or fully anonymous, i.e. him, a man of relative privilege, requiring trans people to entirely demask while scapegoating us for the American government's genocide of Arabs. This extends to us allegedly faking it, our trans status, for social advantage, e.g. including the exclusive ability to be racist and hide behind our privilege, i.e. in a time of unrest when the state wants us dead, trans emasculation is alive and well. Bad Empanada is blaming the victim here, while failing to understand how being trans works. Trans people are trans, period, and some can be racist, above, just as any workers can be bigoted or dishonest in a variety of ways, but treating us like automatic suspects is witch hunter behavior on his part. This footnote pertains to trans-on-trans violence and discrimination, and this footnote pertains to cis queer people discriminating against non-cis people, specifically sex worker and sex worker transphobia. Empanada likes to LARP as the Taliban, for example, re addressing Bad Empanada Live's relative transphobia, i.e. acting tough online while consciously separating his main channel from his more odious habits. In other words, he wears a mask. While mask wearing is dualistic, therefore anisotropic, his doing so is to conceal, if only partially, his worst habits. those of punching down against a minority far smaller than his Arab brethren. In his eyes, they're worthy victims to rescue. We are not. The usual conquerors, the elite, from city-states onwards, dividing labor by having labor conquer itself. In doing so, Empanada is partaking in genocide, and genocide isn't activism, i.e. with Empanada saying our 1% minority is somehow worth less than millions of others outside the imperial core. He's making an exception mid-crisis, not simply overlooking oppression in America, e.g. homelessness, rape, murder, and stochastic terrorism married to police violence, but designating our existence as reprobate. Working through an imperial model of oppression, he's picking an homeless child while erasing trans people everywhere, i.e. overriding our human status with inhuman instead, ergo deserving of violence mid-apocalypse, not worthy of preservation, but tolerable destruction by lumping us all together. Such betrayals always happen in steps. The frog boiled by those holding the pot. As the imperial boomerang sails home, Empanada kettles state victims to enrich himself, killing zombies despite surrendering his own humanity in godlike ways. Genocide is the domain of traitors, including unscrupulous prospectors selling out. Through his own success, in light of genocide, Reed growing his channels, Empanada shows the perils of activism under capital. Exploitation and liberation occupy a shared space. One where a social activist, no matter how venerated, can sell out as much as anyone, i.e. by enacting genocide for some, sparing others from the flames to enact capital as usual. From a dialectical material standpoint, betrayal is betrayal, and everything adds up in the end. Assimilation will always be poor stewardship, the Judas silver, merely coins for the ferryman. The fact remains, trans people don't exist exclusively in the first world, and those who do can still be homeless or hunted to extinction. By treating trans people as expendable, Empanada is ranking rape, by forgetting or overlooking how genocide is genocide, regardless of where it occurs. Two wrongs don't make a right, Empanada, and killing us won't save the Palestinians, or bring them, or their global southerners, back. Furthermore, nor will framing trans activists as the exception you're willing to make, ergo the sacrifice, e.g. myself, a trans sex worker, being out in the open and fighting nakedly for Palestinian liberation. RE, Justice for Palestine 2023, it always falling short in your eyes, i.e. you've denied every attempt for me to contact you, treating me like I don't exist, or like my work is worth less than yours. Sex work is work. Fuck face. RE, people who talk about sex like it's their main interest must be dealt with. Make it taboo again. You left that message up for over a year only to recently take it down. Luckily, I have receipts. Of course, while I'm addressing Empanada here, he's a bad actor who's repeatedly outed himself, his latest doing so being something of a grand unveiling. So while I'm addressing his hateful antics, I'm not really appealing for him to change, i.e. because I think he's a transphobic cunt, one who's poisoned his emancipatory corpus with genocidal counterweights for years. Instead, the message of this appeal is to his audience, regular or otherwise. His antics harm not just his own scholarship, the death of goodwill eroding community trust, but the very Palestinians and other Arabs being accused of transphobia, and punching down at trans people. Empanada not only frames us in bad faith, he feeds, however, inadvertently into Orientalism through fascist inroads. All roads lead to Rome, profiting off its worst aspects, tokenism and false activism, by attacking us directly, and Arabs if only indirectly or by accident. Again, genocide is genocide, regardless of intent, i.e. intent doesn't matter, outcomes do. E.g., the Holodomor famine, even if resulting from incompetency, still killed hundreds of thousands. All states are bad, as are state defenders of different kinds, i.e. Bad Empanada is a state apologist through function, a false rebel whose demonstrable Marxist-Leninism I've written about extensively. RE, Understanding Vampires, 2024. I've studied Bad Empanada for a long time, and always thought his transphobia was present but concealed, and up until now I secretly hoped his antics were somehow discreet, i.e. a tasteless joke from someone I could appeal to the humanity of because his worst antics, like Marx, were relegated to alternate, even private spheres. But bigotry is bigotry regardless of where it occurs, and no one is beyond reproach. RE, Making Marx Gay, 2024. Holistic problems require holistic solutions. Developing communism is holistic, targeting the etiology of genocide, not the symptoms, by imagining a world that embraces the existence of queer people. In Empanada's case, I called his attempts at humor a dog whistle the moment I saw them in 2024, when I wrote my book chapter on him, and spoke out on his bigotry elsewhere. To it, I've done my best to call him out, but fear I have fallen seriously short. I certainly never apologized for his reactionary antics, but also thought there was some buffer between him and them, thus limit to his capacity for harm, the academic from the man, ergo the racism, i.e., like the bigotry couldn't poison his work, tarnishing its effect. To it, I've done my best to call him out, but fear I have fallen seriously short. I certainly never apologized for his reactionary antics, but also thought there was some buffer between him and them, thus limit to his capacity for harm, the academic from the man, ergo the racism, i.e., like the bigotry couldn't poison his work, tarnishing its effect. Did I ignore the signs by not blowing the whistle hard enough? I'm not sure anymore. All I know is that anyone can regress, with Empanada acting like he somehow can't be a damning testimony to his own first-world privilege. To err is human, and I overlooked his human potential to put his foot squarely in his mouth. I.e., academics are arrogant, even failed or de facto academics. I frankly wasn't expecting my spiritual nemesis to show his ass quite so hard all at once, but in hindsight I'm not the slightest bit surprised, nor other people, it would seem. Quote, I did expect it at some point, but I'm still sad, writes the author of the thread, Bad Empanada coming out as reactionary on r/d program below. I might have failed insofar as I never got anywhere in fiscal terms, but I still seek to prevent harm. Likewise, I never took reactionary funds to punch down at tiny minorities while acting like I'm not the destroyer. By comparison, Empanada is increasing the odds that harm will persist, i.e. among those academics who punch down only divide their legacy in ways that cause harm, e.g. Noam Chomsky being a genocide apologist with Cambodia, and Norm Finkelstein and Howard Zinn being two-state solutionists, and Finkelstein allegedly having other bigotries below, etc. Manufactured consent takes many forms, both from the academic and those apologizing for them, e.g. Bad Empanada, an independent researcher arguing against Jewish exceptionalism. Yet shielding Finkelstein, a Jewish academic, from criticism to a knee-jerk reactionary degree. This was back in 2023. I.e., the death of goodwill is one of 1,000 cuts, smaller betrayals leading to bigger ones. In turn, state apologia extends to apologizing for tokenism to a silencing degree of criticism, i.e. silence takes many forms, including giving someone a measure of doubt, if not the full benefit thereof. In Empanada's case, he's a two-faced hypocrite. In my case, I feel as though I held out hope that Empanada's secret bigotry was smaller than it was, versus having spread throughout his entire existence, i.e. that his microaggressions were somehow one-offs, or not somehow reflective of a double standard tied to systemic abuse corrupting his work. In other words, I tried to separate the art from the artists, if only to a degree. Sadly, his actions over the past week are part of a larger pattern, one demonstrating how Empanada, like other essayists before him, is not an infallible god. He's a man whose flaws have been there the whole time, for all the world to see. To that, I respect his past work, but not his present abuses, while recognizing either category as not being wholly separate. I believe Finkelstein said something similar to Benny Morris, that someone, academic or otherwise, is not shielded in perpetuity for having done good work before. Those who do good work under capital often see themselves entering pacts with those they swore to challenge. By going mask off, Empanada has done so through the incremental apologies that I and others have supplied. E.g., he's a dick, but his essays are good. If doing so leads to genocide apologia, which it does, then we're well past the point where picking and choosing is even remotely acceptable. Abjection furthers genocide. To it, bigotry is bigotry, and nothing should excuse or apologize for that, i.e. pretending like someone and their work is incorruptible as time goes on. Radicalism needs to fight for all oppressed peoples, or it's just fascism, i.e., parentes false rebellion, tied to unscrupulous bandits who in some shape or form take state pay and do state work, i.e. including by proxy or through Marxist-Leninists who promote men like Empanada. Debating bigots is always a mistake, and one made by those who, to some degree or another, turn a blind eye. Source, thumbnail, the deprograms the fire will cease. So while hardly a darling in my eyes, the phrase kill your darlings applies as well to Empanada. From him to Che to Stalin, a rebel can have a bigoted, therefore fascist character to their work that, when left unchecked, leads to future harm en masse. Empanada is currently deleting evidence, yet simultaneously signaling his bigotry to others. Darvo and obscurantism, his own cryptonymy, subjugated, regressive, and ultimately resigned to a lack of struggle towards universal liberation. R.E. me, vis-a-vis Frederick Douglass. He's cooked, in other words, lacking tactical unity and calling his deeds necessary ipso facto, while giving in to the cowardly temptation of revenge. He will soon learn that's one bell you can't unring, and you don't defeat the enemy by becoming them, therefore playing into their hands. Source, thumbnail, Ben Empanada's Be Ruthless, 2025.
Stop.
It brings me no pleasure to announce this. One, I'm saying what I and others have already known, albeit in ways that confirm my worst fears. Two, I didn't want another asshole to deal with, i.e. he's just another obstacle to overcome, on top of everything else. But despite how people of privilege betray out of convenience, and those without betray out of desperation, with Empanada, a white straight male Aussie, having the luxury of privilege to betray others with, abusers are often broken clocks. Every exchange goes both ways. The most insufferable able to give something useful, even as they harm us in different ways. Empanada, for example, has fought hard for the Palestinians, but sadly has convinced himself the deaths of trans people can liberate his chosen victims to rescue. The state will kill us both, and then hang him with his own rope. To conclude, free Palestine and trans rights. To conclude, free Palestine and trans rights are not mutually exclusive, and you can oppose the state without pinkwashing its atrocities. Acting otherwise and calling it triage is merely a continuation of genocide, i.e. the moment you choose a victim to die is precisely when you become what you fear. Extermination relies on ruthless selection, its pimp-like arbitration, the same old refrain. No homeless children can stop genocide, only intersectional solidarity punching up, i.e. the whores, fags, and Arabs fighting the elite as comrades, ergo preventing genocide by not taking part. Capital rapes by design, and Empanada is raping his fellow oppressed by using his privilege to play the victim for others, i.e. showing other workers his ass. Solidarity exhibit, artist top half, top left, Bay Ryan, a trans-masked non-binary person and indigenous person. Mid-left, Rickspin, a trans woman of color. Mid-center left, Darling, a non-binary witch. Mid-right, Victoria Sachs, an intersex person. Rightmost, Vivian Strange, a trans woman and YouTuber. Bottom half left, with knife, Luna Rose, a cis person, but practicing sex worker who wanted to help. Middle, I Nocturne, a trans boy. And right, Tyler and husband, with Tyler being a trans man. These workers, if you want to see the work that they do, you can either go to this page itself and look at the censored version or the uncensored version on my website. Clicking on any one of these will take you to where I feature them or to their socials where you can support them as well. And when the man comes around, Aussie or not, show him your aegis. Work is included on a paid voluntary basis specifically for this piece, more to be added when shoots materialize above. Justice for all peoples harmed by capital, including Palestinian Arabs and trans people around the world, i.e. for whom Empanada's reactionary antics are ultimately a disservice, An attack on trans women is an attack on embys, trans men, and intersex people, whereupon our nudity becomes a weapon for our foes to gawk at awkwardly at, stare and tremble. And last but not least, these are the footnotes. If you want to read them, they include examples of token transphobia, either between trans people or sex workers, specifically a cis lesbian versus me, a trans woman. Both of us being sex workers in that case. So these are just some additional examples, but you don't need them to really understand what's going on with Bad Empanada. But these are examples that are provided to show that it's not just Bad Empanada who's being transphobic, nor the Arab people who support him by punching down against trans people, regardless of where they are. Because if you punch down against trans people in one country, you may as well do it in all of them. That being said, Arab people, secular or practicing Muslims, are minorities, but they can still punch down just as Empanada punches down, despite them being, for all intents and purposes, a white straight man from Australia who may or may not be a practicing Muslim. I don't know that much about him. Can still encourage marginalized infighting through his particular grift. His grift includes bits of truth, including his essays, but it also includes just flagrant transphobia at this point, unapologetic transphobia that he doesn't even really acknowledge in his own video, as in he has not apologized as of me writing this essay, and to my knowledge, as of me recording this video reading this essay. So that being said, this is the essay itself. I have kept it relatively short, but I think it is important to discuss and acknowledge, just because I don't think anyone should be given a pass for being transphobic. It could be Bad Empanada, it could be me, it could be Jesus Christ. It really doesn't matter. If you like the video, you can like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also support me on Ko-fi and Patreon. The links are supplied at the beginning of the video. You can leave a comment in the comment section. You can reach out to me on social media. And yeah, those are the different ways to support me. And if you want to support the other artists involved, you can click on any one of these names and be taken to links where you can support them in their work as well. Last but not least, I do have a project right behind this one. So now that this video is out and released, in tomorrow or the next couple of days, I will be reading about Persephone's Silksong Symposium, a page dedicated to my playing and studying Teen Cherry's long-awaited Silksong. So stay tuned for that to come out. I'm excited to share it. It includes a variety of pieces. If we look at the table of contents, it includes about my research, a summary of the symposium, defining Metroidvania, concerning my research on Metroidvania, mazes and monsters, gorgons and amazons, first impressions of the game, ongoing, a final review to be completed, and thematic analysis or 3. So there's a lot to talk about, even though I haven't played very much of the game yet. I have gotten started and I really, really like what I see. It's super cool. And yeah, I will essentially be reading what this work in progress is currently. So stay tuned for that and stay safe out there.